What is the most hurtful thing someone said to you? You never do anything right in this house, you fucking idiot, said by my mom, whom I've been taking care of the past year when the long COVID symptoms kicked in. I cook, clean, pay the bills, get the groceries, take care of the cat, get her meds, drive her everywhere, make the appointments to her doctor, all while exhausted and struggling with depression. I forgot to wash a few dishes and put them in the dishwasher after putting away the dishes left to dry overnight, and she hits me with that. Couldn't even bear to look at her with the tears in my eyes. We ran an argument about his past choices of sleeping around giving me 4 STDs, and he said at least my choices didn't kill my daughter. For context, my daughter had died that year at 6 months in her sleep SIDS. Everything was done correctly to help prevent SIDS, but it just happened. It was not my or anybody's fault. Anywho, he said that and I started throwing hands. Landed my ass in jail, but all charges were dropped and I was acquitted because that was bullshit, and literally everyone in the system told me they would have done the same. Gay married male here. I once posted online on Facebook after it looked like Joe Biden would be the 2020 nominee, saying I knew he wasn't a lot of people's first choice but why I was grateful for him, including how he endorsed same-sex marriage as VP and how much it meant to me. A toxic former friend had a meltdown and posted a nasty messed up reply calling people like me bougie pieces of shit and ripping on my marriage with sarcastic comments like, "I'm glad you were able to consolidate your assets." One of my parents told me that I was a burden. Keep in mind that this is after years of the whole family implying this to me. I had recently got out of the hospital for the 3rd time due to health issues. All of them denied they told me this before, saying it wasn't meant to be interpreted that way. It's been a year now and it still hurts whenever I remember this. They aren't wrong about it, but I wish it was never said out loud. I'm still trying to become fully independent and it's a struggle. Lol. I was 10 and our dog was chained to the clothesline so he could run back and forth. Was out there with her, and I can't remember what had happened or what I did, but my mother told me that she hoped the chain would wrap around my neck and strangle me to death. One of a few similar things she did and said throughout my life. Maybe that's why I never shed a tear while I sat on her deathbed cancer and watched the nurse give her that final shot of morphine before she took her few last agonal breaths. No offense, but I have less respect for you than our other friends because you aren't going to college. My brother-in-law, who I considered a good friend, 2 weeks after I dropped out BC I realized I had no clue what I actually wanted and was looking to try something new with my life to figure it out. Well, guess who's going to be the only person who doesn't get to know I graduated college and is going to be making much more than you, Mr. Civil Engineer, thanks to that 2-year college break. Not so much a specific comment, but the last thing my dad texted me before being placed in a medically induced coma was instructions as to what to do with his life insurance. He knew full well he was leaving it to his ex-wife and his fiancée. I did not know this. I've struggled a lot with that exchange, because I wanted nothing more than to fulfill his dying wish, and realizing he was knowingly setting me on a task, with zero ability to see it through, has hurt me more than words can express. After ending 3 years of no contact after he had a heart attack, and choosing to ignore the fact that he was never going to apologize for being a complete asshole over the years, I tried to give my old man a second chance for my daughter's sake. While I was trying to reminisce about one of the few memories I had of him not being a shitty dad, he looked me in the eyes, smirked like it was an inside joke, and said, "One day we'll have to talk about just how little of your childhood I remember." My mom told my grandma as I was walking past that I'm the reason she wants to kill herself. She knew I was walking past. My stepmom told me to stop being so dramatic when I told her at 16 that I genuinely wanted to kill myself. And my dad told me that I should be grateful because he put a roof over my head, food on my plate, and clothes on my back when he learned I'd spent a majority of my life from 6 years old to about 20 struggling with suicidal ideation. Yeah, my parents. When my father visited me in the psych hospital and he asked me why I'm trying to break him and my mom up. I never did, and I always blamed myself as a kid for their marital problems. For him to come visit me miles away in a psych hospital and accuse me of that when I was in a crisis. I yelled at them to GTFO. I'd give that's the worst thing, as they've both said horrible things to me, but that's what comes to mind. I'm hurting RN, NGL. I'm hurting bad. Your father tried to commit suicide because you're such a bad kid. When I was 14 I came home after school and no one was there. No one came home by dinner time, so I started on my homework. An hour or two later, my stepmother came home along with my stepbrother. She told my dad had tried to kill himself and was rushed to the hospital. I'll never forget what she said, "Your father tried to commit suicide because you are such a bad kid." My nickname in 3rd grade was God's worst mistake. The same group in class that made 9 teachers quit over the years tried their damnedest with a persistent and constantly evolving mixture of verbal, psychological, and physical abuse to ensure I killed myself. The school dismissed it as boys will be boys. Meanwhile, my parents told me to laugh along with them, among other platitudes. I've managed to block out those years, thankfully. This is why your girl broke up with you for your best friend. This was in high school, ABT 7-8 years ago. I now have a great life, GF, and I'm also on great terms with my mother. My parents are amazing people despite our cultural differences and heritage, and my mom is one of the nicest women I know, and honestly I don't really remember those words that much anymore anyways. I also don't talk to that best friend anymore. I was 18 when my sister 24 died suddenly of an aneurysm. For weeks after I was told so many different iterations of "it's all in God's plan, everything happens for a reason," that was the start of my break from my own faith and losing my religion. I cannot imagine saying something like that to someone who just lost a sibling. I have a visceral reaction to that phrase to this day, and it was 24 years ago next month. When I was around 10 I came home from school. My grandmother asked how my day was. I don't recall my specific response, but school generally wasn't great for me. Her reply was, "You're fat and ugly. That's why you have no friends." I just said "Thanks, Grandma," and went upstairs and laid in front of my bedroom door, so if she tried to follow me up or come in she couldn't, and waited until my mom got home from work at 8 p.m. I have a daughter that is 6 years younger than my son. One day the daughter did something that any normal 2-year-old does, and I told my wife, I said, "That's pretty cool, he never did that." She said, "Yes he did, but you were working so many hours you weren't here to see it." That is the most hateful, hurtful thing I had ever heard, and from that point on I cut my hours way back and stopped giving a s what my boss thought. If we ever have kids, I don't want you to teach them your language. It sounds shitty. Thanks, that's very sweet of you, darling, criticizing my culture because it's different from yours. Bonus points for having proposed to me in that language and not appear as a hypocrite. She also stated, "We can't live together as you'll increase electricity costs." Didn't say a single thing when I was the one paying rent. We were at a neighborhood event with our 2-month-old daughter. One of our fuckwit neighbors had overheard that my wife had had a C-section and said to a group of us, "Yes, I remember being wheeled through a ward of women who did C-sections. They all looked like they'd done none of the hard work, like girls in the salon just getting their hair done. That bitch nearly caught a whole new family of hands." What's wrong with you? You're a freak, and it's effing bizarre you're against this. You're such a disgusting freak for not wanting to take this step with me. You disgust me. You don't love me. My ex berating me because I don't want children since mental illness runs strong in my family, and I just don't have a maternal bone in my body for children. I am great with dogs. I haven't been right since. After the last call hookup, I had a guy meet me back at my place for a little casual romp. The next morning he rolled over and said, "I can't believe I effed you." At the time it was a real blow, but I recently saw him again and actually, what the hell was I thinking? He's short, at least 20 pounds overweight, and has back acne and a receding hairline. I feel much better now. You bring everyone else down around you. You're an emotional black hole. That hit so hard, and honestly it made me think about it and felt like she was right. Sort of like constantly feeling sorry for myself and inadvertently fishing for people to feel sorry for me. I didn't know this, but it was so succinctly said and so direct and fluid. This was in middle school, true lol. I worked really hard in high school and theater, still very happy in it over 20 years later. I was accepted to every school I applied, and through a donation my high awarded me a scholarship. In the glow of pride of this unexpected gift, my mother said in front of everyone, "I can't believe they wasted their money on you. Guess who doesn't get comps to my shows?" Someone called me a child beater because this little 7-year-old girl kept trying to punch me in the face while I was sitting on a couch. I grabbed her arms and pinned them to her sides, got up off the couch, and marched her over to her mom for punishment. The mom proceeded to scream at me instead of her child. Stupid people shouldn't have crotch goblins. When I did something my mom didn't like, she always responded with, "What's wrong with you?" If something random happened around the house or when we went out, it was, "What did you do?" It was always said in a harsh tone. It didn't matter that I had nothing to do with the issue. Is it any wonder that I have always had major self-esteem issues? My father told me that I would never live to the age of 50 because I was overweight. He went as far as to leave my brother and sister his estate in the will, but I was only left a small amount of money that I would only be eligible to collect after my 50th birthday. He was one of the most cruel people I have ever met in my life. Various things said after suicide attempts in the past. You should have died in that hospital bed. You made your mom's heart go into AFib and made her use the last of her anxiety medication. You're so fucking selfish. Why would you do this to me? Why would you disrespect me like this? Do you just want me to look bad? A random guy and his friends yelling, "Yeah, keep walking you foofa." I'm not one to condone violence, but when he called me the fa, I knocked the wind out of him. He was twice my size. Ex-military, black belt and part of the LGBTQ community. Never underestimate someone. You have no idea what they are capable of. I'm not sure if it's the worst, but it's fresh in my mind. I graduated high school after working really hard to finish on time. I didn't have the best grades, but I finished and that was an accomplishment for me. The biggest to date. And when I told my mother that I was graduating, she said, "You are barely graduating." I was fired at my job from United Dairy because I asked for the accommodation of having someone write down what order the milk would be pushed out in. I simply could not hear the intercom because I am schizophrenic and hear things and could never make out what was being called out because of it. Lost my job in March. I hope you die in a fire, from my mother, to me at age 18. The only thing that died was the shred of hope and willingness to work towards a decent mother-daughter relationship in the fire of my heart. I absolutely do not want to give space in my life to anyone who could say such a thing to me, to my face. My ex-wife, whom I told many things in confidence, once turned around in an argument and said my physically abusive mother should have beaten me to death. There were many more hurtful things, but this is one of the gems. Needless to say, I have moved on and live a much better life without her.